Yo, what is going on? So blown out highlights can be one of the biggest spoilers for a professional looking image, but what do you do when you have to shoot against a window? Well, today we're going to talk about how to get this look right here for a cinematic looking interview with just using 2 budget lights against a window. Let's get into it. But first and foremost, welcome to Creative Tech Lab. My name is Leo. This is probably your first time here, so big up to you for clicking on this video that makes you an awesome person, and to the people that have already gone down below and hit the buttons up. I always like to start each video by just saying thank you. I greatly appreciate it. Have you ever been watching like a professionally done film, like a documentary or even a narrative film or something on Netflix, and you see a perfectly exposed face with all this detail with them shooting against a window? Well, if you're like me, I thought that was because they were using really expensive $100,000 cameras. However, newsflash, it's not that you need a new camera, you just need some more lights. Now, once it is that you're figuring out, if you're like me, you actually see it everywhere. You see it in all these different commercials and all these different TV shows where the subject's face is perfectly exposed and you could still see outside the window, kind of like I'm detailing here in this scene. Let's run through the things that you need to get this done. So in an interview setup, because you're going to be having someone that's talking, you're going to be filming them in real time, and you're going to be filming them in either 24 frames per second or 30 frames per second, depending on your delivery method. That means your shutter speed is going to be set somewhere between 50 and 60 frames per second, letting a ton of light into your lens. Not to mention, if it is that you're going for that more dreamy cinematic look, that you may want to have a wider aperture, and then you're letting more light into the sensor. So then the question would be, how would you expose for somebody's face and for the window if you're shooting against a window? So I've seen other creators detail this process here before. However, I feel like they downplay or not emphasize enough one of the key things here to get this done, which is this right here, an ND filter. So what it is that you're going to want to do on your setup is you're going to want to set the camera up with your focal length, with your aperture, and obviously your shutter speed based on your frame rate. And then you're going to expose for the window using an ND filter, because at the aperture and shutter speed that we're talking about is just going to be blown out highlights. You're going to use an ND filter. In this case, I'm using a variable ND, especially since you're dealing with a window. In my case, on this particular day, it was cloudy, so it was nice to have a variable ND that I could adjust on the fly if I needed to. This is the first key thing that you're going to need there. And then the other main thing that you're going to need there is a really bright key light to raise the exposure back on your subject's face. In this instance, I'm using the Godox VL300, which is a 300 watt light, so it's a fairly powerful light. You're going to need something like that in order to combat the sun, especially if you're going to keep your aperture wide open. Now, to keep the light fairly soft on my subject's face, I'm using a big parabolic softbox here. This particular one is from Godox, but Godox actually now makes a matching softbox to go to their light. I'm hoping to try that one out soon just to see how it compares. And this is quote unquote double diffuse because it has the small diffuser on the inside and then it has the big one here. I do sometimes typically use a honeycomb grid to focus the light, but because that loses another stop of light and I really did need the intensity of the light to be bright to battle the sun, I took off the honeycomb grid and just used it as it is here. That way I was able to use it, because actually the intensity on the light I had to be set all the way up to 73%, which I never really have to use that in a situation like control situation here, but because I'm battling the sun again, I had to have it that bright. Now, to be honest with you, that's all I really needed there, just to give a little bit more separation on her shoulder and a little bit on her hair. I did have only my only other main light here, which was a Godox SL60W there. Now I probably should just use it as a hard light there so I could get a little bit more intensity on the hair and on the shoulder. But I did have that in my rectangular softbox, which did have a honeycomb grid just to focus it on there. So if we run through it here, this is what it looks like. This is what the windows look like just in regular exposure blown out. Then this is the image exposed for the window, and as you can see, she's in completely darkness here. And if I bring in just that kicker light, you could see just a little bit extra separation on her shoulder and a little bit on her here. And then once we bring in the key light, it brings it into the right exposure and we have her face perfectly exposed there. Now, to be honest, I was kind of rushing just to give this example to you guys. This look did come out a little bit more moody than I would like it. As you could see, there's a nice roll off onto the other side of her face. And if I look right here on the right side of her face, which is on the left side of the image, you have that triangle, that Rembrandt lighting that people always talk about in terms of that cinematic look there, but it could be determined a little bit too moody. It would kind of depend on what the actual subject on the interview was going to be. I think if the topic was a little bit more serious and we want to go for that real cinematic vibe, it would be fine. I also had the B camera set up there shooting into the shadow side of her face there. But if we wanted to make that look a little bit more high key and we didn't have any other lights, we could use a 5-in-1 reflectors, which I did grab right here. Just took that, positioned it right next to her face and just filled in the other side of her face. And then if you see this right here, that gives you a slightly higher key look that you would be looking for. So that way, that's something that you could play around with if you want to give a little bit more fill to that side of the face there. Or I could have brought the light a little bit more just to wrap the light a little bit more around her face and still keep it kind of moody, or turn up the intensity on the light just a few more dials there. With another way to achieve the look that we were going for there. And just for reference, in case you're wondering, the actual camera setup that I did have, the main camera was the A7S III shot in S-Log3 with the Sigma 24-70, which was set to about 35 millimeters there to get that main shot, that medium-ish shot there for Kimberly. And then I did have the A7 III set to a B cam there, which was shooting the tight shot with the Sony 85mm f1.8 there, shooting into the shadow side of her face to give a close-up shot. That's if I wanted to have that cool cinematic look there with the dual cameras and two different angles to cut away from. These two cameras don't match perfectly. I'm still trying to play around with the color grades to see how they look there. I tried to do it best as I can for this video just to show the example, because this is more so a lighting video and not perfect how these two cameras would match together. But hit the subscribe button and the notification button if you want to see if you are able to pair these two cameras together, A cam, B cam, or if we're gonna have to look for another solution there. But anyway, no need to ramble on here. I just kind of wanted to do this because I feel like with the people that have covered it before, they didn't go too far into detail on using the ND filter and then actually having a bright enough light in order to get it done. So this is what creating content is about. Everybody gives their own different perspective there. And not to mention, if you are a video creator, content creator, knowing how to light a talking head shot is probably going to be one of the most important things that you have to do, because at some point it's going to come up, whether it is that you're doing it for yourself or likely you're going to be doing it for a client somewhere, and you're not always going to be in a controlled environment, especially when you're starting out. You're not going to be able to have tons of stands or tons of flags to be able to completely control your light. So you kind of have to know how to work in unpredictable situations there. On a movie set, they wouldn't necessarily even go this route. They would go as far as to ND the windows. Basically, they would tint the windows, but that's the difference between a run and gun setup and a movie set, where a movie set you almost have like unlimited resources. The budgets are ginormous, where it is if you're charging just a few $1,000s and you're a one-man band and you're trying to get everything done, then you need to know these little tricks and tips in order to get these things done here. Anyway, if this video helps you out in any way, shape, or form, please go ahead and drop it a like, hit the subscribe button and the notification button, as I have a slew of other lighting videos coming your way. How to light a food video, product video, high key lighting, more cinematic interview lighting setups as well. So stick around or just check out some other videos. There's probably something else that you might like here on the channel, but I will catch you in the next video. Big up yourself. Peace.